All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to stand. Hopefully that doesn't make you feel too uncomfortable, but just makes me feel a bit more comfortable. So let's go. So what I want to really focus on today is kind of driving customer retention via delivery options. And when I'm talking about delivery options, I'm talking about delivery options at the point of checkout. Okay, so when you have consumers on your web front end and they are making the choice whether to purchase their chosen item from you, and they're going through that process via checkout. Okay, and that's what I want to kind of really focus on today. So what I also want to do is make it slightly interactive. And what I'm quite keen for people to do is to join Slido. You can either scan the QR code or you can join at slido.com via the number there. And I'm just going to pull up a couple of questions during today's session to kind of keep you engaged. Research shows that people's capacity during a presentation is about 20 minutes. So when we've got 45 minutes, I want you to engage with me as well a little bit. And the QR code will continue to come up as we go on. Okay. All right. You've probably never seen a picture of Beyonce at a delivery conference, but bear with me. So Sasha Fierce is Beyonce's alter ego. So Beyonce, one of the largest global music stars in the world, but she says she's very timid. So when she comes on stage, she uses the persona Sasha Fierce to make herself confident and to perform in thousands of people. So why have I put this on here? So my day-to-day job is I run the commercial team at Metapack, which is one of the Octane brands. I've been with the organization close to 8 years, but I don't want to sell to you today, so I'm going to use an alter ego, and I'm going to be like a stat man, okay? I'm going to take you through some of our consumer research and how that can influence the delivery options that you provide your consumers at the web front end. So that's my intro. So rather than putting a photo of me, you've got Beyonce instead. What I'm going to do, so I'll talk a little bit about our research. What are the key findings from our research? Some of the market highlights, so drill down into a couple of markets, and what we found was quite interesting within particular markets. Some examples of customers, so examples of where I believe that retailers or brands are using delivery options in the right way to drive retention and conversion at the web front end. I'll talk a little bit about who we are, and then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A. Okay, so as Metapack and Octane, we release a benchmark report every year. So we released our annual benchmark report in February of this year, and it's in collaboration with the retail consultancy, Retail Economics. We surveyed 8,000 consumers and 7 online sellers across 8 key international markets. So that's one part of the research, and then the second part of the research, if this works, is we did some mid-year research. So we surveyed 3,000 consumers across the main European e-com markets and 600 online merchants. Okay, so that's where I'm going to derive a lot of the key data from today. So unless you've been hiding beneath a rock, you'll know that a lot of consumers are concerned about inflation and the general economic outlook, okay? We haven't seen inflation like this since the early 90s, and interest rates and the banks of the Eurozone and the UK continues to increase rates within the market, which makes consumers nervous. But what impact is this having on consumer behavior? So this is one of the key things that we looked at. Now, we found that there are 4 main types of consumer behavior in 2023, okay? And we looked at this across a couple of different income cohorts. But typically what we found was there are a large percentage of what we call necessity shoppers. And these are people that have budget constraints. It's more kind of needs over wants, and they are waiting for improvements within the general market or within their own budget before they make purchases. Okay. The second kind of consumer behavior we found was postponers. These are people that are not making big purchases. They are looking for seasonal offers, but they will still purchase the nice-to-haves. So what we found was kind of beauty and health products do particularly well in the market when consumers don't have as much discretionary income. What we also found was that there were some value hunters. Now, these value hunters are people that want to continue to purchase, but have no brand allegiance. They're looking to downgrade, but to continue purchasing within the market. They still want the products that they desire. And then finally, we saw quite a large percentage of probably our favorite consumers, carry-on spenders. So these are people that, even though the rise in inflation and people's budgets not necessarily being as high as they previously were, that they continue to purchase as normal. Okay, they typically have financial stability, whether that's they have access to credit or they've got savings that they've built up over numerous years. What was quite interesting to see from the data is that the carry-on spenders obviously decreased as you move down the income levels. So typically, the more income you're generating from your work, the more likely you are to continue spending. But as you can also see that the number of necessity shoppers also increased as the income levels declined. So something to really think about in terms of the way that consumers are thinking about how they're going to purchase in this year and maybe into 2024. Okay, first question. So I'm really interested. What you'll see on Slido is a couple of options about what is the most important factor regarding the delivery for consumers? So this is one of the key questions that we asked the consumers that we researched. So really interested to understand. So I'll give people a quick minute to make their choice, and Darko's going to help me out with the answers.
Sure.
Do you have the answer so we can see it?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
What's the slide number?
1 second, technical error. Can't bring up the answers at the moment, so I'm but let's have a look. Apologies. Let's have a look what our consumers thought about it. So what's really interesting is that we ask consumers about when they're shopping for a product online, what's important to them when it comes to delivery. And what you'll see on here is that in the turquoise is the answers from 2022, and then what consumers, what was important to them in 2023. And what's really interesting is that the cost of delivery has risen in importance while the speed and convenience has decreased. Okay, so that kind of relates typically to the fact that budgets are squeezed and therefore people are really searching for value, not just with the products that they're buying, but also with the cost of delivery. So they're willing to forego fast at-home delivery for a lower cost and for something to be delivered maybe later down the line and typically maybe not necessarily to home. So there's really quite interesting data to see. So I think historically it's always been about fast, next day, home delivery, trying to really drive consumers at checkout to order and to get that item within 24, 48 hours. But what we're starting to see is that as consumers have less to spend, they're really looking for options to maintain more budget so they can continue to spend. Okay, and that means that cost of delivery is really important to them at that point within checkout, and some are likely to switch between brands or move to other websites if they see a high charge of delivery. Okay, so it's really quite important. You got it? Or all right, we're just going to leave this, so I apologize. We're just going to move on. So what's really important was we also talked to consumers about sustainability. Okay, obviously it's hugely in the media. There's a lot of companies that have got ESG policies, green policies, and what we found is that consumers are increasingly looking for green delivery options at checkout. Okay, they want to see that option. More consumers are becoming more conscientious about their footprint, about their deliveries footprint, about where they're purchasing items from. But what was really interesting in the data is that even though consumers want green delivery options, they don't want to pay for it. Okay, they still want a low delivery cost. But what we found was that, interestingly, that the switch to out of home has increased. So consumers looking for green delivery options, low cost, but are likely to say, yeah, I'll go and pick it up from a local store, or I'll pick it up from a Pudo location in order to get that lower cost. Okay. Interestingly, that the high cost to offset emissions, what we're start to see in the market, some carrier management platforms like ourselves and some other retailers and brands, what they're doing at checkout is offering the consumer to offset their delivery. It doesn't seem to resonate that well. The consumer's still not wanting to offset that delivery by paying a premium or paying into a green fund. So yeah, quite interesting data that we found. I'm going to move on, sorry. So even though we talked about green being important, out of home possibly being a choice in order to decrease the cost of delivery, we found that home delivery is still significantly the preference for consumers. So we found out all the consumers that we researched that over 77% still said that that was their preference. Okay, so we're finding that Pudo points are increasing, so the number of consumers that are looking at Pudos or store collection is increasing, but home is still the majority the majority preference for a lot of consumers. Interestingly, when we talk about the markets, France as a market seems to have a high number of consumers that were looking for Pudo options, 1 in 3 that we found, which was probably the highest across a lot of the markets that we surveyed. So it's interesting that a lot of people talk about the delivery experience and how important it is, but what we found from the research that it was the 3rd most important criteria for driving customer loyalty and retention. Okay, and that was behind the price and the quality of the product. So it's the 3rd most important. So it really matters to focus on not only converting the customer at the front end, but making sure they have a good delivery service. And our research over the years has continued to tell us that if consumers had a bad delivery experience, they are very unlikely to shop with you again. And within this market, when there's less consumers, there's less purchasing power, it really matters to retain those customers and keep them coming back to drive retention and lifetime value. I'm going to skip these. So what did we find? So we drilled down into some of the markets that we researched, and these are the kind of the key findings that we had from the research that we took. So French and German consumers ranked the quality of their delivery experience the second highest, loyalty behind prices. Okay, so I know I said globally it was the third, but French and Germany really focus on the delivery experience being part of that loyalty driver behind the brands and retailers that they shop with. I've mentioned that France is the leading market when it comes to pickup. You'll know within the French market, there are a range of different carriers. You know, you've got Chronopost, Colis Privé, Mondial Relay. You know, there's a high density of carriers now offering PUDO locations. And there's a requirement for a high density because we call it the slipper distance. So consumers don't want to travel any further than what they can do in their slippers. Okay, so there needs to be a high density of PUDO points to make it an effective place for consumers to use. Germans are really rank an inconvenient returns policy as an important reason to shop with a retailer again. Okay, so it's really important within that market that you have an easy, trackable returns experience for the consumer because it's really important to them to shop if they're going to shop with a brand again. In the UK, we found that high shipping costs is one of the number one turn-offs for shopping with a brand again. Consumers in the UK want free delivery for a lot of items, especially when basket values are over kind of 40 or 50 pound. They're expecting free delivery from the retailers and brands that they shop with. And what we found in Italy, that there's been a increase in the number of consumers that are looking at PUDO points. This was typically around 5% when we did our research last year, but it's picked up to 16%. So there's a slight shift in the Italian market of consumers thinking about using PUDO points for delivery and obtaining their items. So this is to kind of reaffirm that the quality of the delivery experience is really essential. And if you really want to maximize conversion and retention, you've really got to focus on this area. Now, while providing PUDOs is good, you've really got to focus on home delivery and the types of home delivery you offer. It's no good just offering a standard 3 to 5 day service to the consumer. It's about offering multiple options for home delivery, whether that's next day, standard, 24-hour, timed delivery slots, nominated day, and giving them an accurate time for that delivery. Consumers aren't too concerned about it getting there quickly anymore. They don't necessarily need everything within 24 hours. They're happy to wait for something within 3 to 5 days, but tell them when it's going to turn up. Okay, I was working with a luxury brand recently, and they said to me that by changing to an accurate delivery date at the web front end, it drove down the number of Wizmo calls to their contact center. Because typically what they were doing is saying it was going to be delivered in 3 to 5 days. And the consumer, because it's a high value product, were calling up and saying, it's been 3 days, where's my parcel? Okay, so if you're giving that accurate delivery date, it's also going to drive down your cost to serve, and you're not going to get that high number of Wizmo queries into your contact center within the post-purchase area. So I've talked a lot about outbound, but what's really interesting is that when you've got consumers researching and looking to purchase items, they're not just thinking about, okay, what's the cost for this to be delivered to me? They're also thinking about how much is it, if I need to return this item, how much is it going to cost? And what we're finding in the market is that consumers don't want to pay for returns. And you would have seen a lot of news within the market that some of the big brands, fast fashion brands, especially in the UK, the likes of ASOS, Boohoo, and a couple of others, have started to charge. But our research shows that consumers aren't wanting to pay for returns. So you'll start to see some retailers set up loyalty schemes where you're paying £10, £15 for the year to kind of cover that cost of free returns and try and generate some revenue to cover off that kind of cost of returns coming back in. Have we got a site we carry on? Yeah. All right. I didn't know whether that's so. What I want to just touch upon is a couple of use cases that I see within the market of good practice of delivery options at checkout, which is helping to drive consumer retention and conversion. So Adidas. So what they're doing is that they are providing a range of different delivery options at checkout. That's based off the consumer entering their postcode and then the delivery options being validated. Okay, so at the point of checkout, they're making out an API call that may be to a platform such as ourselves or to the carrier directly, and they're validating what services are available to that consumer based on the origin of the parcel and the destination that it's going to. Okay, so the reason they do this, or the reason a lot of people do this in the market, is to make sure that they only offer at the web front end what they can fulfill downstream within the warehouse. Okay, so it's making sure that you provide the correct promise at the web front end and that you can fulfill it. Time and time again in the market, what I see is that I can order something at 10 o'clock on a next day service, but it comes 2 days later. Okay, it's about making sure that your web front end is dynamic enough to provide the right options to consumers. So what you can see here is that it gives an accurate fulfillment date. So what it's telling you is that if it's going to be delivered tomorrow, it gives you the date. And if it's going to be the standard, it's giving you the date. It's not telling you it's going to be 3 to 5 days. It's telling you the exact date, which means that the consumer clearly understands when their parcel is going to arrive, and they're not going to pick up the phone to your contact center to ask when that parcel is going to be delivered. What they're also doing is that you have home delivery, and they've also got options for click and collect. And they offer click and collect via their own stores or via Pudos. And what they're doing is they're pairing those on a map. So you can see just not only stores, but also the Pudo locations for you to collect your item. Holland & Barrett, another good case study that I've seen in the market. So what they're doing here is they're offering a nominated day. So it tells you exactly the hours that delivery is going to be made, and you can select the day of that particular purchase. So a range of different delivery options, but it's very clear about when that item's going to arrive and between what times as well. So you can see nominated between 8 and 9, and next day you can see before 8 p.m. So it's really giving the consumer a really good idea about when their delivery is going to arrive. New Look is another good example. So interestingly, on the collection side, what they're doing is they're starting to differentiate the collection. So you'll see that if the consumer wants that item quickly, they're being charged for a quick collection at store. But if they're willing to wait, New Look will defer the delivery, probably on one of their trucks for shop fulfillment, and they'll provide it free of charge. And then what they're doing is they're then listing collection points below their stores. So what they're doing is they're trying to drive the consumer to collect from store and drive that footfall back into store to create more conversion within the physical store. But the consumer can collect from Collect Plus, but it's going to cost them a delivery charge for that. So those were the kind of case studies that I wanted to provide. Metapack is part of a 660 million business group. Octane is our parent company, and there are a range of different brands within the group that provide shipping solutions. We offer solutions at checkout, at shipping, intelligence, and tracking. And some of the customers that I've talked about there use our checkout product to provide the correct delivery options for conversion and retention. We work with a range of big retailers across the industry, and we process about 1 million e-com parcels a year. Okay, so hopefully you found that interesting and some little nuggets for you to take away to improve your delivery options at checkout. Yeah, I'm happy to, if we've got time, I think we're happy to take some questions.
Thank you.
Oh, give me one, I need to put my headset on. All right, let's go.
A short question. You were talking about the market research, but I missed in the first slides which countries the customers are included in the questionnaire.
Yeah, so predominantly the main European markets. So we're talking about the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and then we did some research within the US and Australia as well as part of the benchmark report. The mid-term research is just the 5 main e-commerce markets in Europe.
So the Netherlands and Belgium are excluded from this research.
Yeah, they weren't included. But I would probably say that their shopping habits or their delivery preference are similar to the other main markets that we researched. I think that within the Netherlands, PostNL has a wide network and has a large percentage of the market, but you're starting to see some other players come in to try and take some market share. So I know Trunkers are here. There's a couple of more local hyper delivery going on within the market because of the density of consumers as well. So yeah, I think definitely more out of home within the Dutch market. I'm starting to see. Yeah, that's starting to grow more and more if you've got a bigger density of the lockers that I'm seeing.
Any other questions or comments from the audience?
Oh, go on. Give me one.
Brave souls. Gentleman in the red shirt that normally has fantastic questions.
Yeah, I have a question. Well, wait, this is not. It's better. Let me check.
There you go.
So I have a question about the market intelligence and the deliveries that you mentioned as well. Do you offer that as also on deliveries that you track via the delivery manager, or does it require printing labels via Metapack?
Oh, you know our software better than I do. No, yeah. So in order to have our intelligence product, yeah, you need to be shipping on our platform. So what we would do is that once we you create the label and then we manifest the data to the carrier. We then go out and collect the tracking from the carrier. We ingest that tracking into our system. We standardize it, and then we use that tracking data with the shipping order data you're giving us, and we put it in a kind of reporting suite that you can then track. And it's called intelligence, but it gives you the ability to look at on-time deliveries, carrier SLAs, exceptions, late deliveries, a range of different reports within that suite.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Gentleman in the blue.
Oh, we're getting going here, aren't we? Everyone's building confidence.
I'll try.
Thank you.
So my name is Fabien Onez and I'm working for IKEA. I have a question related to the coming years. When you saw or you demonstrate a bit, the trend evolution when it comes to delivery at home versus, collect, pickup. How do you see the perspective moving forward? Do you think that the shift will increase, or you think that at a certain moment it will stabilize and collect especially will not go further than where they are today, with, let's see, 20% roughly?
Yeah, good question. So I definitely think out of home is going to increase. I think it continues to increase year on year, but I think the pressure on consumers in regards to their budgets, and if retailers are going to dictate that out of home is going to be cheaper, then I think we're going to see an increase of that in the years to come. I also think on top of that, people are going to become more and more conscious about their their carbon footprint. Okay, and if they're going to become more conscious of that, having 5 or 6 parcels turn up to your door every day, you're going to start to think about, is there the ability for us to consolidate that into one location? And I think what I've started to see, especially in the French market, is that the carriers are differentiating their rates for PUDO delivery than they are to home. Okay, so you're starting to see retailers try and drive consumers to PUDOs because it's cheaper for them to deliver. I haven't seen that within the UK market yet. Okay, so when I've talked to some of my customers, they aren't getting a differentiated rate from the carrier to deliver to PUDO. It's kind of the same rate. Okay, so I think if we start to see more differentiation in the pricing of PUDO, then I feel like the retail market will drive consumers to that, and there'll be a bigger adoption. If you look at the research that Vinted have done this year, they did a report on their C2C marketplace and the impact that if they delivered those items to home rather than a PUDO, the increase in CO2 footprint they had, and it was quite astonishing. I think there's quite a lot of research going on in this area around CO2 and how much emissions are per delivery, but I don't think there's anyone in the market at the moment that's really is a market leader or is really fundamentally understood what the impact is, because supply chains are complex. So trying to fully understand what the footprint is from cradle or origin to the consumer is really difficult.
And connected to the movement of more collection from the customer, do you see now some movement when it comes to what are the different micromobility solutions that we need to enable people to carry the order from the collection point to their house? Did you see any movement in this field moving forward?
Just so I understand your question, so the ability for, because I'm thinking of where you're from, the ability for people to move large items from a PUDO to a home?
Absolutely.
No, that's a good question though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Maybe I should go and there's Cycleon bikes out there. Everyone should go and buy one of those, shouldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen.
A cargo bike is a solution, but I think we need to be more innovative in this field, because
I've seen. I live in London, and I see parents have these big boxes on the front that they put their kids in, and they travel to school. Maybe they could be used as parcel carriers for, that's what you go to the PUDO location with, and you pick up your new desk or your chair and you just put it in the front. Maybe.
Thank you.
No problem. I don't think I answered your question, but we got there.
But it's good that there is nothing yet on the market for such a thing.
No, I haven't seen it. May be different in others. I think I've seen. There's a lot of studies going on. I think there was one. We got a request to do something within somewhere in Belgium where there was a city that were looking at consolidation points for carriers to not go into a kind of an area, and actually you would have to deliver to a point on the outskirts of that city, and then there would be a bike courier that would be contracted with the council that would then make the deliveries. We as a platform are in a unique space where we see a significant number of parcels or orders go through our platform for consumers. So, when you've got 300 retailers, we see one consumer ordering from 5 or 6 different retailers. And it would be great if we could say we'll consolidate these with one particular carrier for that one delivery rather than 5 or 6 carriers turning up. There are probably some carriers in the audience, but we haven't been able to have those sorts of conversations, because you can understand why they don't want to consolidate, because it loses them revenue. So it's something that's developing. But I think if you look in the space and there's people like Hive, Herbify, you've got QuickPack that are challenging Swiss Post within Switzerland. There are more and more coming onto into the space, and if you're interested, you can contact me. We've got a range of different green carriers that have now come onto our platform that we've started to allow our merchants and our retailers to use because there's been demand for it. So trunkers, the ones I've mentioned, you've got Stuart. There's a couple more now that are really coming to the front. But I think it's also about the ability for a retailer to provide those carriers the goods at a certain point, because a lot of it at the moment is that you're warehouse to consumer, and actually there needs to be an additional point within that process to be able to hand that parcel off or item to one of these carriers where they don't have an extensive network. They're typically within urban city centres, and that's a challenge at the moment as they want to grow.
Fantastic. I think we have time for one more question.
Oh, one more. Anyone else?
Any other brave souls?
Going once, going twice.
I've got one last question for you.
Go on.
Yeah. So one of the emerging themes at the conference is clearly the let's say slightly more austere behaviour of customers at the moment. What impact? Look, first few slides you mentioned in terms of behaviour around actual online spend. What impact do you think that's had on delivery choices, and what is Metapack doing with the broader retail ecosystem to help with that sort of delivery selection, assisting in a slightly tighter economic environment?
Yeah, so I think it's deferred delivery is something that we've started to look at, where you can delay the picking of an item within the warehouse and then pushing it out 2 to 3 days later on a service. So that's predominantly the thing that we're starting to see. So I think a lot of pick and pack operations where it's ordered, it gets packed and it's out for delivery. I think retailers are having to be more intelligent about if they offer a deferred service at the front end where the consumer doesn't need it tomorrow, they can have it in free, or they've nominated to have it delivered on a Saturday when they're likely to be in. How they can integrate that allocation within their pick and pack system. So we provide the service for them to showcase at the front end. We understand the lag time within the warehouse and also the delivery time to calculate the date that they can provide the consumer. So that's where we come into it.
Fantastic.
And I think we also are starting to drive more PUDO points. So we have a database of location. We call it locational services, and it's a database that our retailers can call via an API to get the closest PUDO points to the consumer's preferred delivery address, and then they can display that at their web front end to select the closest PUDO point to drive more traffic to those channels.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dan. I think we're out of time for the time being. So really appreciate the bright faces early in the morning. Warm round of applause for Dan, please. Thank you.
Thanks for engaging with me.
Very much.
I'll stick around for 10 minutes if anyone wants any final questions. But hopefully you found that useful, and everyone have a good day and safe travels back when everyone leaves.
Thanks, everyone.